Thanks very much for coming. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. President McNall.
Here.
Vice President Clements. Here. Trustee Clemenson.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Valentine. Here.
All right, moving into B, the approval of the agenda for this evening. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Great. All right, welcome everyone. This is our first board meeting of this very young school year. And after 3 days of instruction, from where I stand, everything seems to be going very well. But I'm sure Dr. Benante would like me to knock wood, so I'll do that just in case. I want to welcome everyone back, especially our newly appointed District Clerk, Megan Shields. Thank you so very much. The next meeting of the Haldane Board of Education is scheduled for Tuesday, September 20th, 7 p.m. right here in the auditorium. That will be our business meeting, and that workshop topic, should we approve it, will be our first campus master plan update. Dr. Benante?
Yes. So thank you, Sean, and welcome everyone. It has been a great start to the school year thus far. As Sean noted, we're 3 days in with students, 4 days in as a whole, and we prioritized only having one superintendent's conference day so we could get our students right in on September 1st, and I think that was a really good decision. I do want to go back to the first day with staff, though, and recognize that we had approximately 10 individuals who had just completed 20 years of service for Haldane that we recognized, or at Haldane, that we recognized at our opening staff meeting last Wednesday. And as we transitioned into that day, we focused on an activity that would join many new faculty members and staff members with our more senior members of the faculty, and also to connect with various departments around campus through a scavenger hunt that Julia Sniffen and Christine Jamin organized. However, Julia and Christine sought out the support from the local Chamber of Commerce and many business owners in the community, as our faculty and staff made their way around campus, would receive a discount or some sort of service from a local business that they could now take with them and use for whether it be the month of September, some businesses for the entire school year. So we're very thankful to the local businesses who supported that effort. Appreciate Julia and Christine for organizing the connection activity with our faculty and staff. And then we moved on to the business of the day in preparation for our student arrival the next day. As Sean mentioned, it's been a very good opening. Our students I always gravitate down towards kindergarten on the first few days of school because it's probably one of the more significant transitions that are occurring on campus. And while many of our students have had great pre-K experiences, for several it was their first day of school. And for all it was their first day of school, but some sort of organized school experience in some way. And Ms. Wild, Ms. Lamont, Ms. Cratera all did a fantastic job with their support staff and welcoming our new students. And again, just wanted to express my appreciation to them as they begin to count the days of the school year. And we look forward to the month of September. It's been a good start. I have some other comments at various points in the agenda, so Sean, I'll stop there for now.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, then let's move on to communication from the public. I should note before I read in this paragraph that was brought to our attention that we need to adjust this language at one point or another, that in fact the line, please, disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel are prohibited, is actually unlawful, that we cannot prohibit any kind of the quality of the language that's brought into the room. So at some point we'll amend that, and I'll just amend that this evening. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in, state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel is strongly discouraged. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening. Please leave your contact information with the district clerk, Megan Shields, for prompt follow-up from the board president, or superintendent. So there's me speaking it into draft. I don't think there's anyone here to speak, so we can move on to our information reports. These reports are going to be presented at our next meeting as consent agenda items. And moving on to consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? No? Any, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, moving on to consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Or personnel, excuse me. May I have a motion, please?
Nope, you were.
Financial.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, all right. I was right the first time. Financial.
moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, Dr. Benante?
I just wanted to note that we have seen an influx over the course of the summer of students who require E&L services, English as a new language. So we're accommodating, that's a 6-period assignment I don't believe you've seen in the past. You've become accustomed to seeing others. And that's just something we're closely monitoring throughout the school year. And I would point out that at least 2, because I met them, of our new students are actually students who from Ukraine. Who have family members who've been displaced because of the war, and who have family members in our community who are taking them in for a period of time. And again, wanted to welcome them. And but we also just have seen an upwards trend, and that's something we're monitoring because we're stretched a little thin right now with that 6-period assignment. So just an FYI.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, then moving on to unfinished business. The board retreat follow-up. We did review this a little bit in our last meeting, but you'll see here that our minutes are included. I don't know if anyone would like to. I think later on in the agenda we're going to discuss our goals for this year, which will sort of be bound up in the conversation that we had as part of our retreat. There's no action on that. Is there anything that anyone would like to reflect on or anything? No? All right.
Looking forward to the follow-up.
Yeah, me too. Just a reminder that we are going to meet on Thursday, September 29th from 4 to 7 p.m. at Winter Hill in Garrison. All right. All right, moving on to new business, CSE, CPSE recommendations. Ms. Shields?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendation of the Committee of Preschool Special Education and Committee on Special Education as presented.
Great. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, moving on to the approval of the supplemental memorandum regarding the athletic trainer. Ms. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the supplemental memorandum of agreement between the Haldane Board of Education and the Civil Service Employees Association dated September 6, 2022, related to annualization of the salary of the current athletic trainer, and authorizes the superintendent to sign the agreement on behalf of the district.
Second, please.
Second.
All right. Phil, any discussion? Phil, you have anything you want to say about this?
Just a little background information that we had contracted out for athletic trainer support for some time. In our past, we decided to create our own position, and Meg Crow is definitely one of our key players behind the scenes that makes our athletic program and events go so smoothly for our student athletes, for their families, and for our coaches. In discussion with Ms. Crow, when we initially created the position, she fills out a timesheet. And given that she sees over the course of the school year some ebbs and flows to salary, not to speak specifically about her in that way, but this pertains to her. And over time, we've realized that's not really in her best interest. It's not really in our best interest. This agreement allows us to annualize her salary, so she'll receive a consistent paycheck over the course of the school year. And that those transitional periods between seasons where typically there would be a dip in hours worked, we've worked out with Meg other supports that could be provided to the athletic department. That way we would have no issue annualizing her salary, and she would not experience those ebbs and flows again that she had been in the previous years.
Great. Again, Phil, could you just tell us a little bit about the how you arrived at that yearly salary?
So we examined the salary paid through the timesheets that were submitted for the previous 3 years and found that it was fairly consistent. Again, there may have been the one unique period is when we get into postseason play. And if a team makes a long run into states, Meg is usually supporting that team through the weekends that the team's competing. Putting that aside, though, we arrived at a consistent hour structure that we could then annualize into a salary and then issue payments for over whether I think she's on a 22-week pay period.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Yeah, please.
I've been on so since I joined the board over 7 years ago, that's when Megan's entire tenure has been since I was on the board, and it's been really gratifying to see first the recognition that was made for the need for our students' health and welfare and safety, our student athletes, to bring her on in the capacity that she was on. And I really think that, I don't claim to know what's happening in all school districts related to athletic trainers, but, I would assume for a district our size, we're probably kind of at the forefront, in terms of being able to prioritize this really important position. And it's been, somebody who's not a big sports person, it's still been extremely gratifying to see that we've recognized that need and have really further strengthened our commitment to make that service available to our students. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peggy. All those in favor?
Aye.
No, aye. Any opposed? No. All right, moving on to the approval of charges to district committees. I think we all have seen this and we know what those are. Ms. Shields?
Workshop topics.
Oh, did I skip? Oh, I see that. Approval of workshop topics. Okay, Ms. Shields, thank you.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts the workshop topics for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
Great. May I have a second?
Second.
Great. And let's just take a look at these and discuss. Phil, you had mentioned...
Yeah, so as Sean noted, CSArch will be at our next workshop meeting to discuss the current status of their planning. And I feel that it's in the board's best interest or our best interest to keep each workshop topic for the time being through the completion of that project, which is anticipated to be around December, the end of December, as a campus master plan update. CSArch is already reserved for September 20th and October 18th. If approved, and this works for the board, I'll go ahead and confirm them for November 15th and December 20th as well. It's my sense December 20th will be the final presentation because that's their target deadline. And the reason being is that they have, as they'll report at our next meeting, gone through a pretty thorough solicitation of feedback and ideas through a few different strategies with the community. Meeting with our supporting organizations, other small focus groups, the survey, of which there was a very good response leading into the summer, and then debriefing with the administration and the leadership group that we have along the way. So they're at the point where they're going to transition to generating conceptual designs to present for consideration, and then look for further feedback on that now to further guide their iterations of those designs that they present to the board. We have structured this where the Campus Master Plan Committee will meet with CS Arch to review the current status of their planning before the board meeting. So the Campus Master Plan Committee will meet sometime before the 20th. I think we're meeting next week. CS Arch will provide them with their with a presentation. We'll hear the committee's feedback. That will further shape anything that's presented to the board then in that final, or in that next meeting. And then that process will play out in 3 cycles each month leading up into and through December. And CS Arch has, as I hear it from them, and we'll confirm this in our next meeting with them, 3 different phases, if you will, to their planning that they're going to engage in. The first is presenting to you potential additions or new building that is going to be included in the campus design, and get your feedback on that. That'll occur at the next meeting. Then they'll look to renovation of existing space, so space that already exists, but potentially renovating it. That'll happen at the next meeting, or the meeting after that, I should say. And then the last phase is site work. So when we think of athletics or any other field space that we own, traffic flow on campus, but they need to know, should they incorporate new buildings in the master plan before they move into where's the playground space and what new road may need to be created. You understand. So that's what will play out now over the next 3 months in the planning. So I felt it was best just to keep that as a standing workshop topic, and so we can anticipate that each month we'll have a point of connection. That way we can arrive at a completed project by the end of December. And then the second semester of the school year, moving back into our traditional reports. Obviously, we'll be in budget development at that time, so I prioritize special education first, then curriculum and instruction, and then going into the building detail reports that the board has become accustomed to receiving from each of the building principals.
And it looks to me, just looking at the way things flow, that elementary and middle school, they've been doubled up in an evening because of the extra space at the campus master. Is that pushing
correct?
Forward,
So I'm
right?
doubling
that's
up. Yes, thank you, Sean. I because we only have so many workshop topics, I doubled up elementary and middle school.
Great.
High school and athletics has always been combined, so
Great.
We doubled up that one.
All right. Is there any questions or discussion based on that?
I've got a couple.
Please.
Ranging from big to trivial.
Great.
So I'll start with the bigger. By the end, the basic question is, do you feel like there will be a need to have an update to the campus master plan second semester as it shifts into a new phase? E.g., would you want to pull out a workshop topic for wherever we are in spring?
We may need to do that.
You flex.
Yes, and I feel that in previous years, the board has been flexible in that way if we've had to add something onto a workshop. And I'll just speak, I think we need to see where we are in December, so with that caveat, one thing that I mentioned to the board last year was, as an example of something that could come up, is organizing a separate finance group that's looking at potential opportunities for funding, that comes to understand how the state aid works, building aid works on such a project, and also examines the level of debt service, which is typically tied to building projects that other districts carry. Again, those being factors that would carry in then to the transition to a potential proposition that we would present to the community at some point in the future.
And that was actually going to be my second question. From a financing perspective, do you anticipate that the campus master plan is going to impact this year budget and or bonding?
No.
Okay, great. So, okay, fine. Cool.
Unless the board feels
moves really rapidly.
Really, yeah. I think that would be quick. I would say but it's important to keep momentum, but I think May would be a very quick turnaround.
Just as a point of information, are you required to have a bond vote at the same time when you have a Detroit?
No.
You're not. You can do them
No,
separately if you want to.
And there's a few strategies that you can take with that, and we'll have plenty of time to talk this. But generally, as I'm speaking to other districts, just in anticipation, that the consensus seems to be to keep them separate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's not to say I've been a part of work before where it's presented at the same time as the budget vote. I think on this particular project, though, or what I would anticipate to be included, it would be in our best interest to keep it separate.
That makes sense. Okay, those are my big things. My only trivial thing is I would advocate for the athletics detailed report to have a robust feedback on the physical education component, which, well, as much as I love athletics, that's always, I think, important to hear.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
Thank you.
Now moving on to the approval of the charges to district committees. Ms. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby reauthorizes the charges to the following district committees for 2022-2023: Buildings and Grounds, Code of Conduct, Technology, and Wellness.
May I have a second, please?
Second?
All right.
I
Discussion.
have a question.
Yes, please.
Have we changed our Robert's Rules of Order procedure and we're not asking for a motion and then a second? I'm just.
Oh, might have just been skipping it entirely?
I think so,
you
yeah.
have-
You've
Yeah.
let me go 3 without
Like,
saying
we
anything.
missed
May I
it,
have a
like,
motion,
several
please?
times.
Everything, let's repeat everything that we just did.
I wonder if, I don't know, I'm trying to think when, you've been mowing them, when did we stop getting a motion?
I think it,
When we started new business.
I wonder,
Do you want to back up?
I don't know, I am not a Robert's Rules of Order
We
expert.
can read them. We can read through them.
Oh, I am a parliamentarian, being a union guy, but, you know,
Do you-
I'm not going to call a parliamentarian, on this one. I don't think I need to.
yeah.
As long as you just read the last one in for a motion.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
okay.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
There we go.
Thank you so much.
Here for you.
All those in, wait, let's have a discussion here. Maggie, you had, I think this was the point last year when we were discussing how we're going to go about engaging the community to participate on all of our committees. I'm
Yeah.
curious to.
We had just arrived, or we had been discussing it, and I know that there was just some concern, just in the community that, it's just not clear. It wasn't as transparent as how do folks get selected for these committees. So I just thought it would be interesting when we talked through the process a little bit, but nothing really ever solidified, I don't think, from our discussion. So.
I seem to recollect that we did have some fault. Jen went last year, talked to the PTA about what the PTA was doing, if anything, in order to connect with families, and it turned out that the PTA was not aware that that was
Yeah,
their
I
responsibility.
think I heard and recall the PTA leadership at the time being supportive of us changing the policy, the charge, to no longer state, as it does in several of them, a parent representative as selected or endorsed by the PTA, and to keep that broad. And for the board, it would simply state parent representative, I think. And then we would go about a way of notifying the community that we're soliciting interest in the respective committees.
I'm so glad Maggie brought this up, because I think that it's really important. I mean, the PTA is great, but the PTA is a membership organization. At the beginning of the year, parents have an option to become a member or not become a member, and we certainly want access to parent representation to be open to every parent, when it's a parent, specified. Yeah, I think that's,
And I think it should be, that should
Yeah.
be one of the paths for sure. Like, if the PTA has, has folks they want to nominate, I think that's definitely an avenue. I just think it a little bit more broad to folks who weren't necessarily.
So with that note, the change that would be made on the committee charges is changing the parent, I would just state it as parent representative.
Great.
And not distinguish endorsement by any particular organization. And again, that varies depending on the charge, but we can work with that if that's what the board desires, and just update the charges to reflect that after this meeting.
Great.
and I was also, just because we are getting better at improving our own processes and policies, I know we've had discussion at different times, like what's a board committee and what's a district committee. And I do want to take this moment, I think, to be educative, because I think I'm still figuring out myself, honestly. And so folks should correct me if I'm wrong, but our policy on district committees lists only 3 committees, and that's the audit committee, the policy committee, And shoot, I even made myself remember them before the meeting.
Is it buildings and grounds?
No, it's not. Visitation.
Oh, visitation.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I see.
The visitation. Good job. The visitation committee. And that those are the policies that by policy, though there's the committees that we're always going to have by this policy, 2210. And these committees that we're acting on today, these are committees that sort of stand sort of at our discretion, right? Sort of we're gonna authorize them and reauthorize them as we see fit every year. That gives us the opportunity to add a committee if we ever thought we wanted one. We actually recently, in the past couple of years, decided to do away with the committee because they were being the sort of responsibilities were sort of overlapping. I mean, even recently I found myself thinking like, what's a board committee and what's a district committee? So I did just want to take this minute that these are the 4 committees that we are sort of saying, in addition to what we have in the policy, these are the ones we are, and, charging every year. I hope it's okay that I think we're all.
Do we then need to set this aside for approval for the next, or can we edit this language after?
I think it's a minor change.
Yeah,
I don't
Lovely.
think it's something that would require coming back to the board. It seems that everybody's comfortable with it, and it's based on board discussion that's already occurred at 2 points in our past.
Yeah. I guess the one thing, I mean, it does create some additional work, I assume, for the building leaders to, somebody is going to have to write an announcement. I mean, maybe it goes out in one of your emails, like that we're looking for these, members. I mean, is that what you have in mind?
And it's funny, we just posted locally for an audit committee. We have an opening on the audit committee, and we actually put an ad in the paper.
Yeah.
If I remember correct. No, we did not put an ad in the paper. We put an email blast. What was the ad in the paper for recently? Maybe it was pre-K.
UPK.
UPK, sorry.
Right, yes. Oh, yeah.
confusing my
I saw it in the email. I didn't, yeah. I think that's perfectly reasonable, yeah, to email. I mean, it's mostly parents that get it. I mean, it's essentially all parents and they get it, but I think that makes sense.
Great. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right. Moving on to the designation of board and education members. Okay, Ms. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby designates the Board of Education representatives to the district committees for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All right. We all know what we're doing here, correct? Hopefully there weren't any surprises on this list. Great, okay.
Sorry, what are we doing with the visitation?
I think that's actually on for discussion.
That's right.
It's number 8. We called it building walkthrough, but that is the visitation.
Right. That'll be all of us,
I
I would assume.
I think what's what we've decided in the past, right? We found out what I learned when we first tried to revise this policy and get rid of the visitation committee is that in fact the visitation committee is required by law. And so what we decided to do, I mean, I guess we're going to talk about it, but yeah, we can do whatever we want. But yeah, not whatever we want, but we can come up with a plan for how we're going to carry out that committee.
All right. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Now on to the discussion of our board goals. So I drafted something very simple for us to consider that was just pulled from the minutes from our retreat, and those the broad emphasis of those 3 had to do with our commitment to supporting the campus master planning process, our continued commitment to onboarding new board members, as well as our, if any legislative advocacy we want to do, how we might go about prioritizing those. There were 2 others that were outstanding that had to do more with communication, and obviously always in support of curriculum goals of one kind or another. But we had tabled that until part 2 of our retreat. But unfortunately, the retreat now happens right about before we're going to be wanting to approve these, which will be probably not next meeting, but the following meeting, beginning of October. So I present them to you just to look at if you have any other ideas or anything that I've missed. I welcome edits for consideration for those. And I don't know if anything has come to you or arrives as a priority at this point.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You go.
I mean, I think one of the things we've tried to do, and this is the first, I don't know why, I actually read through everything over the weekend, but for some reason, I don't remember reading the district goals. But I know to some extent, we've always wanted the board's goals to sort of also reflect the district goals
Correct.
as well.
Mhm.
And so that's probably the one thing that I'd want to think about a little bit more.
Of course, yeah.
No doubt about the things Sean sent around or things that we talked about, but I think I'd probably want another opportunity to think about whether the board could have goals that really
Absolutely.
support these,
Yeah.
the district goals.
Great, and I think that we will likely want to discuss those in more detail, a real draft of those edits and offers at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Great, all right. Then moving on, unless there's any other discussion, we'll be moving on to the discussion of district goals, Dr. Benante.
So these are somewhat of a reflection of our discussion at the retreat, again, in draft form, hopefully to be finalized within the next month or so. I think I heard at the retreat loud and clear that the campus master planning work should take priority, and that's reflected here. I mentioned that also we have the feedback from the school climate surveys that were completed in the spring, both from staff and by staff, students, and families, although the family component was more an engagement survey. So identifying areas of focus from the feedback that was provided on those surveys. And then lastly, this is an extension. The board had asked, I think it was listed as last year as the first goal, which has been carried over in subsequent years regarding district improvement efforts. And I'm taking a slightly different angle into this, and again, it's for feedback, whether it be tonight or over the next few weeks, of identifying an improvement framework that can be used as a basis for evaluating the school district's effort to improve student learning outcomes. I think it's important for the district to consider having a framework. I think we're at a point where we can do that, that can transcend board membership, superintendencies, if you will, that we can come to some consensus around is an effective way of measuring how we're doing and whether or not what we're doing is leading directly to an impact on student learning outcomes at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And I think we've done some great work around curriculum design and development, and that's part of it. But I think there's other things as well that should be considered when thinking about the work or the outcomes we're trying to produce for our students. So identifying what that framework is would be a goal for this school year. There's some that are out there that have been well researched and vetted in school systems, and this would be a means of bringing those to the board for your consideration and then for our use in subsequent school years.
Great. And I guess with these frameworks, there are a variety of frameworks that are currently under consideration that we'll have a chance to talk about.
I have one or two. I have two that I can present to the board, and this is something I would come back to at the retreat.
Right, of course.
We didn't get to spend as much time on that element as we did the other two at the retreat, so that's one item that I would like to come back to with the board in retreat to discuss and to talk through with you based on the information we've shared with you in the past, and then some questions that you may have and other ideas to take into consideration.
Well, it certainly does seek, just looking at our workshop structure, that whether we like it or not, I think campus master planning is going to be right in our focus. So I feel like that's where we're going to be. Number one. All right, great. So, anyone else have any questions, comments, Peggy?
Sorry, I have so many comments.
No, please.
What is the plan for sharing the results of the survey with the public, right? So you talked about identifying some topics.
We did. So we went through two engagements with Panorama to help us process those results and get down to some areas for to potentially target. We still have one more session to go through with them, and then we can share the results. The results we have no issue making public. So I think just finding the time to do it, it seemed like the start of the school year is the right time to do it, but not necessarily the first day. So, so as our families are coming back onto campus for our back-to-school nights, we were thinking that may be a good time just to mention the results, whether we have them posted publicly on the website and referring folks back to them. But we did want to attach to that, here are some areas that we're going to target for the upcoming school year and communicate that all at once.
I think that makes sense.
Yes, makes complete sense.
I would just say on the goals themselves, I really like how a lot of them focus on, and I think they have consistently in the time that you've been here, laying foundational groundwork for long term. Like if you think about the campus master plan, of course, if you think about community values for hiring, retaining, recognizing members of the school community, especially when you think about hiring and teacher retention, all that sorts of stuff, and how they manifest themselves within the school. The district improvement framework, I love, and the school climate is obviously a little bit more of a point-in-timey type suggestion, but I think all of those are great. And my only comment would be, to the extent that we can say, at the end of the year, this will be this. You also probably know this. And in many cases, that's baked into the goal, but to the extent that we can make that visible to us and to the community, that would be great.
Thank you.
And I also just want to, I think the fact that we've no longer have as a district goal, a goal that I think has been one of the district goals from the very beginning, which is about the creating a structure for continuous review of K-12 program. I think that really speaks, I think it's not that it's not there, but the fact that it's not up there front and center, well, this is how I interpret it, you can tell me if I'm wrong, means that, like, by the end of last year, like, everybody had done some work around that. I think we all acknowledged that there was still a long work to do to make it a sustainable, integrated, fully integrated activity. But I do kind of think it speaks to the progress that's been made in that area.
Yes, we have a process in place, and I think we feel good about the process. That being said, you'll hear at the retreat, I think this is the next iteration of that goal.
The district improvement framework,
yeah,
that makes sense.
To think about how the work related to MTSS, curriculum design and development, we haven't talked about it so much at the board meeting, but teacher evaluations, principal evaluations, superintendent evaluations, all fit into a framework for improving student learning outcomes here at Haldane. So that's, I think those frameworks exist, they're comprehensive, and they speak to the various work that goes on across departments and across buildings in the district to arrive at that very thing, which is to help our students. And so having that framework in place, I think, will become somewhat of a North Star, if you will, or a guiding force for the district's efforts today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if we are thorough with that work.
And also say that the community values, we're using them as a basis for hiring and retaining and recognizing members, but I also think of it as, particularly when the cultural conversation right now is so much about quiet quitting and people only wanting to do so much and no more, whatever, however you feel about this, because it'll come and go like all these fads do. It is, in one way or another, an invitation to reconsider why it is we're all here, and it becomes an informal means of assessment, a way of saying, this is what we expect, this is really why we're gathered here, no matter where you are in your trajectory here, and the staff. So. And it seems to also rhyme very well with the Haldane Essentials in a way. It feels like an expression and a.
Yeah, we spoke to this at our open house, and I only mentioned it because I just saw Lex Smith, who was here late as I was walking in. No surprise, because we highlighted Lex in our comments with opening day with staff, that in many ways Lex is a TA, works primarily with our high school students, and Lex has taken on several assignments over the years working with our most at-risk students, and is recognized for such here and admired for such on campus, both by those students, their families, and his colleagues, and in many ways embodies our core values that we defined, that I shared with you at our first retreat. Embody those, and there's no ambiguity around that when we think about someone who's here to serve, someone who has has a high level of emotional intelligence. We think of Lex, and everybody shakes their head, yeah, he's one of those people. So I think that the core values work, while subtle, there's really good opportunity there, again, to keep us focused on in a way that helps us consider and recognize and reward the employees who are already here, who are doing great work, but also somewhat as a tool to, through the recruitment process, to guide the types of questions we're asking individuals, the prerequisite skills or attributes that we're looking for in someone who can come into Haldane that we think can do good work here, and then also through retention and thinking about who we have. We're bringing in a lot of new staff members right now, whether or not this is the right place for them, and they're right for us. So we've been encouraged by that work thus far. I look forward to sharing more, but I wanted to mention Lex because I saw him on the way in here and he reminded me of that.
I think it's also worth noting that so far in this meeting we haven't mentioned COVID, and I think our district goals have been tethered to COVID for as long as I've really served on the board. So it's nice that we don't have to cede valuable real estate to the health and safety of our students and staff and community. So great. Moving on then to the discussion of the building walkthrough. I'm going to assume this is largely a calendar question as much as it is, the necessity of it. But do you, Phil, want to talk a little bit about how we've done this in the past?
Yeah,
and
so
how we might want to
typically,
continue?
thank you, Sean. Sorry, I don't mean to
No, it's fine.
talk over you. Typically, we have worked with Tim to identify an hour before a board meeting for Tim to walk us around the campus and identify areas that have been improved over the course of the summer or the previous school year, and then potential areas that maybe we're looking at or have concerns about. I think this is appropriate now. We have the building condition survey, that's being completed. We also obviously have the campus master plan work. So it may conflict with our policy meeting, but I was wondering if prior to the next board meeting, we could reschedule policy and do this prior, because Peggy, you may know this, I think this is supposed to occur within the first month of the school year. Something in my mind is telling me that the building visitation is supposed to occur sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, I know we've done it early on.
Maybe it's just habit that we've done it sooner rather
No,
than
we
later.
have to. Well, I was able to pull the law up really quickly. And it says at least once annually and report at the next regular meeting. That's what this one law, I haven't done.
Nothing specific to the time of the year.
Yeah, we always used to do it early. And again, I have nothing against doing it at the beginning of the year, especially since we think that there's a chance that that's actually the requirement.
I think weighing in here on whether or not to reschedule policy to make room for this, given that in that meeting we're going to be discussing CS Arch, and it's the first part of the campus. We might want to at least have facilities on our mind as we come into that meeting, even though they're not going to be talking granularly about how we're going to modify the current building so much as where future builds are going to. It might be very useful for us to do that next week if it's possible.
So 20th at 6
Yeah.
an hour. Okay.
And a reminder for the board that session is open to the public. So we're opening a public meeting at that point. And technically, any community member can join us for that walkthrough, which is not an issue for us on that end, but I just wanted to make note of that.
Great. So then.
And Megan will work with Peggy and Maggie to reschedule policy.
That's fine.
Yeah. And that being said, does it seem likely that at some point in the fall we might do another walk that is connected to the campus master plan? Is that something that we should, in official business or otherwise, because the scope of that may change, or it might be something that...
I don't have it on the agenda, but absolutely. If the board desires and feels that would be helpful, whether it be independently, or I should say as a group, independent of CS Arch or with representatives for CS Arch, we're happy to put that together.
Great. All right. Lovely. Okay. Okay, then, moving on to our second round of communication from the public. I don't see, unless Catherine, you have anything to, no? Okay, great. Okay, then. Moving on to board reflections. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? No?
I just have, actually, it's sort of more of a question. Delighted that everybody's back in school and so far so good. Is this the first, I noticed when driving by Garrison that they started on the 6th. They started today. Is this the first, do we usually sync up?
I think we have. I don't know if it's been
Intentional or
intentional
just-
that
okay,
we've
okay.
synced up, but I do think in the majority of the years, at least I've been here, I think our calendars have largely matched.
It is my understanding that the initially posted start date
Yeah.
was the same as ours, and the community pushed to have it pushed forward. So
After
yeah.
Labor Day.
After Labor Day. so
Because
they
the
can have those
the majority of schools in Putnam started last week,
Right.
Okay.
whereas the majority of schools in Westchester and Dutchess started today,
Yeah.
which is not uncommon, again, after Labor Day. Again, we have a committee we pulled together in the late winter, early spring to talk about the calendar setup, and every district has its, I'll say, traditions when it comes to having certain days where, and that are in session or not in session. So I'm glad we started last week. It was nice to get a couple days under our belt.
We definitely had a few people caught by surprise, and again, I always feel like I was in on the vote on the calendar, and I couldn't answer the question, but we had people who were booking their vacations in February, right, to get certain places, and they booked it, and then everybody, the couple families on Garden Street, missed the first couple days of school because of the vacation. So, they wanted to know why that was. We started there.
It's unique in where Labor Day sits some years, and again, we have minimum days that we're required to be in session. We have contract expectations that we're looking to. And again, certain days that we've grown accustomed to having, like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And we typically do an extended President's Day weekend and an extended, quote unquote, extended Memorial Day weekend in May. So if you were to hold those things constant in this year's calendar, if I remember correctly, we had to start prior to Labor Day in order to get those other days or continue to take those days as holidays or recess days that families and staff have grown accustomed to. So every year is a little unique, but when you're voting on the calendar in March, you're not necessarily thinking about September or August 31st.
There were as many parties happening on the 1st as or 2nd, I should say, as the children were getting onto their prospective buses, by the parents who were like, all right, baby.
That's right.
Celebrate Labor
Enjoy
Day at the
that
start of school
bus
all
ride,
at once. Right?
my sweet darling.
Well, we aim to please.
And those 2 days felt like a rehearsal in a way
That's
for,
right.
For what started this week. But,
Well, and we've done it for several years. This isn't the first year we've done. I think we've done it before, and at least 1 year before, and I feel like we've even done it prior to that. Not that I expect everybody to remember, and
Ebbs and flows.
yeah.
my reflection will be is it was great after those 2 days to go to the community day block party here in Cold Spring, and it was lovely to see so many Haldane students and families out and about in a very compressed, all ages there, really enjoying themselves for a beautiful day. So it was energizing, just to sort of feel that normalcy really, and everyone sort of, without any guard, just enjoying themselves in a nice, fun end to the summer. Although some will say the summer goes until the end of September, and I think that's true. And also say that it was great today. We had our launch for the foundation this morning, the Haldane Foundation, and it was lovely to sort of meet leadership there and to be thinking already about the programs that they're going to be funding over next year. And those, again, it feels like the year has started. So, any other reflections?
Would you repeat again the number of faculty that had 20 years of service?
I believe it was approximately 10.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I feel very fortunate, right? I mean, when you hear about all the lack of teacher shortages, the, enormous mobility in the educator workforce, that we would have that many teachers who've been here for such a long time, I feel is very fortunate for us. And I just wanted to, acknowledge that.
The average career, I think, is 4 years.
Yeah, no, it's real,
Four.
it speaks,
Yeah.
Wow.
again,
People
I guess,
burn out
yeah.
super quick.
Yeah, it's hard. Hopefully, that means we're doing something right.
so.
But we're also very fortunate.
All right, Phil, any final thoughts?
I enjoy sharing my superintendent fails with the board. And I also attended the community block party on Saturday, but I won't say I made the mistake. Chief Officer in Charge, Larry Burke, was on campus, I believe, on Friday, and I saw Larry, and I said, Larry, what time do you start on Saturday for the block party? And he said, we'll be starting at 1 o'clock. I said, okay. Thinking the block party started at 1, not Larry started shutting down the block at 1. So I came into town with my family at 1. We're walking down Main Street. And it was wonderful,
Yeah.
Main Street on a Saturday in Cold Springs, great. But
You walk right into Hudson Hills.
There
on
was
that
no block party. And we had a soccer game or something to get to, so we weren't going to stay till, I think it officially started at 4 and turned into John, yeah. So we're a little early.
But one is when you had to get your car out. And
Sure.
If you live
That's
on
true.
one of those
Right.
streets. So by 1,
Right.
we had our car
So,
out,
fair
so
enough.
we could, yeah.
Again, superintendent fail, but it was great to see some folks. I didn't get a chance to see as many folks as I think I would have if I had been here 3 hours later, but we had a great time, Carrie, me and the kids. That being said, yes, great block party. Sean, you had mentioned something else that our meeting with the HSF today. Thank you for mentioning that. And it's great to meet with Michelle and some new members of the school foundation, and we're looking forward to supporting their events through the course of the school year. And I know they have some announcements to make, so I don't want to get ahead of that, but it's always great to partner with the school foundation.
Great. All right, thank you, Phil. There's nothing else, then I'll make to move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thanks.